I just finished recording arguably one of the coolest projects I've ever been involved in, the John Lofgren M98 Japanese World War II boots. It's about as close to the original as possible. We literally took a CT scan to scan the original to match it. So super limited quantities. There might only be one batch of these, so get them before they're gone. These Kujo Yard Shoes have taken the landscaping and yard work scene by storm, because until Kujo, most people were just using regular sneakers and just tennis shoes for yard work, which are really awesome, and there's a reason people use them. It's because they're cheap, they're cool and breathable, they're comfortable. But at the same time, normal shoes fall really short in a lot of ways because they're just not durable enough for serious yard work. They're not water resistant, and so just a little bit of morning dew can ruin your whole day. But Kujo claims to fix all those problems while still maintaining the sneaker-like aspects. So we're gonna cut all of these in half, not just one. We're gonna review basically the entire brand in one video to really figure out, are these actually the most loved yard and landscaping shoes, or is it all just hype? What makes a yard shoe different from a regular shoe, and are they worth the price? And Kujo's a tiny company. They've only been around since 2018. And the way that the owner describes this on the website is, when I was younger, I worked alongside my dad in our family construction business, building homes, remodeling, landscaping, and whatever else needed to get done. I always wore my sneakers to work, to my dad's disapproval. I just didn't like wearing heavy work boots. I realized that there was a real need for light and comfortable work gear, tough enough to work outside, lawn care, landscaping, maintenance. And the cool thing that I really like about this is the name Kujo comes from his cousin who passed away, who was his buddy when he was younger. They used to go do outdoor stuff. They used to work together. And for me, a small business owner, I love when these small family-owned businesses that have been around for a short amount of time, that come from a completely different industry and try to solve a problem in a new way, that's a lot of times where the best innovation comes from. And that's why I'm really curious, what makes a yard shoe? How is this different from other shoes? But first, what are these shoes? Well, starting with this one, the brand is Kujo. The style is the Kujo Yard Shoe. They weigh 1 pound, so very light. They retail for $135, so right around what you'd expect to spend for a little bit nicer of a sneaker. They're made in China, and the way they position this product is the comfort of a shoe with the toughness of a boot, water resistance to keep you dry in the morning dew, with breathability for the hot afternoon sun. From the waterproof fabric, dew guard toe cap, to the water resistant mesh, these shoes are designed to stand up to wet grass and clippings. Next is the Kujo Jacks. They also weigh 1 pound. They also retail for $135. They're also made in China, and the way they position this product is the perfect combination of lightweight comfort, aggressive grip, water protection, and lace-free convenience. With a tight-fitting Kujo preen upper, the Jacks excels in wet conditions. Our pull-on Jacks combines the convenience of a lace-free shoe with the functionality of a work boot. And finally, the Kujo landscaping boot. They weigh 1.5 pounds. They retail for under $200 at $190. They're also made in China, and the way they position this boot is ultimate protection with the composite safety toe and water resistance, while still being light and breathable. Armor your foot with the ASTM rating composite safety toe, superior ankle support, and ample water resistant protection no matter what your day brings. Combat wet yard, surprise showers, and puddles without the worry of wet feet with our durable waterproof fabric dew guard toe cap and premium water resistant mesh. So what that means to me is you basically start with the most breathable, the least water resistant, to more water resistant, less breathable, to the most water resistant and least breathable. So now start looking at the materials of these boots to figure out what makes them different from regular boots and shoes, and specifically oriented towards yard work. Starting with the water resistance, and it seems like there's two main ways that they do the water resistance. Number one is that dew guard toe cap and the sonic welded TPU. This dew guard material that's on the toe of all these boots is similar to fake leather because it's mostly a fibrous material with a plasticky coat on top. So it's gonna act like leather because that fiber structure is gonna give it some strength. I don't think it's gonna be quite as strong as leather. This top coat's not gonna last as long as leather doesn't have a top coat, but for water resistance, this is gonna work better than leather because leather's porous and it can let water seep through the actual pores. It slowly absorbs through. So it's essentially a synthetic waterproof leather alternative. And it's pretty thick. It's around 1 to 1.2 millimeters thick. The other material they use to make this more water resistant is that TPU overlay. And what's cool is it's sonically welded to the material. So you get the same effect as this toe guard where it's gonna be waterproof, at least the area that it's covered. It's gonna be fairly abrasion resistant compared to at least just like to some naked mesh. But at the same time, it's not as bulky, and the whole shoe doesn't have to be wrapped in this thicker material, so it keeps it more lightweight, more flexible, while still maintaining some of those features. But at the same time, it's not gonna be as durable, so once you start wearing through that, it's only a fraction of a millimeter before you lose some of the waterproof. aspects of it. And it's not like this whole shoe is meant to be waterproof. There's strategic waterproof areas on the shoe. And that's applied across all 3 shoes, just in different forms. So that's how they make their shoes water resistant, but these aren't waterproof. And that was part of the goal with this, is they didn't want completely waterproof shoes, because the way they do waterproof shoes for the majority of shoes and boots is your foot is completely wrapped in a waterproof bag, which makes the footwear completely waterproof. But the downside of that is they're not breathable at all. It locks all that heat and vapor in the inside of your shoe, makes your feet really hot and sweaty. If you wear through that little bit of a lining, it completely ruins the waterproof aspect. So with Kujo, none of these are truly waterproof because they wanted to balance that breathability and the water resistance. And so you have 3 different materials that once again are scaled in breathability. Starting with the most breathable and their most popular shoe, the Yard shoe. This is what they call an air mesh, where it's basically a spacer mesh where it's 2 really, really lightweight materials with connecting fibers in between that allows you to have some structure but a lot of airflow back and forth. And the shoe is even gusseted. It goes like a gusset all the way up to the 4th eyelet. But this material is not waterproof at all. We put did like a waterproof test on the entire shoe and just the upper materials to show you how water resistant they are or are not. And this one just leaks straight through. So it's for sure the most breathable, but the least water resistant. Compare that to the Jacks, and this is more water resistant than the Yard shoe because this is basically just a stretchy neoprene. They call it Kujo-prene, and it has these TPU overlays, and this neoprene is naturally water resistant because we did that waterproof test just on the material, and you can see it takes a lot longer for that water to seep through compared to this mesh. And then the landscape boot, this is mostly dew guard that wraps all the way around the boot. There is a little bit of real leather up the backstay, similar with, actually all 3 of them have leather up the backstay. But for the first 3 or 4 inches of the boot, it's all that dew guard. Then you have that TPU overlay over top of this mesh, and it acts similar to the mesh, but it's a lot more lined on the inside, and it has a lot more TPU overlays, so it's the least breathable out of the bunch. But for these upper materials, we wanted to run the puncture test to gather some more information, and the Yard shoe punctured through at 52 pounds, the Jacks at 80, and the landscape at 51. But what about the inside of these shoes? Well, the Yard shoe has a breathable antimicrobial mesh, and it is a very open mesh, especially up in the forefoot, but pretty typical type of mesh for a sneaker around the heel. The Jack, since it's this Kujo-prene, it doesn't really need a lining. There's technically a little lining in the heel, but it's just neoprene, so it doesn't really have a lining. And the Yard shoe also has that breathable antimicrobial mesh, and it's basically the exact same materials as the Yard shoe. But materials only matter so much, so we wanted to do the breathability test to really see how much smoke came out. And as you can see, very breathable with the Yard shoe, fairly breathable with the boot, and then surprising results with the neoprene. I think it's still gonna be more breathable than it looks because it's neoprene and those holes aren't nearly as big as these mesh. But it's kind of looking like this is one of the more water resistant and the least breathable out of the bunch, even compared to the boot. And then as for the heel counters, it looks like they all have some sort of internal heel counter. It feels like fake leather, if I'm being honest. It probably is, but we'll see if we get it cut in half. And then looking at the insoles, the Yard shoe and the Jacks have the same insole, and then the boot has a little bit nicer of an insole. We did the ball drop test on them, and this foam in the boot was a little bit more responsive. I don't know why, because it feels almost exactly the same. It's a different color, maybe color makes it more responsive. So now we understand where the breathability comes from, we understand where the water resistance comes from, but what about the comfort that they're really trying to nail with these? A lot of it comes down to the midsole, because these are an EVA midsole. They call it their Kujo EVA anti-fatigue midsoles, and this foam is super soft. The Yard shoe is around 20 Shore A, the Jacks is around 20 Shore A, the landscape boot is even softer, around a 15 Shore A. We did the ball drop test. These 2 shoes bounced up about 13 inches, the landscape boot bounced up 17 inches. How's it compared to other foams in more sneakers? Well, this foam is really, really soft. It's a little bit softer than the average foam that you see, so it's gonna be a lot more comfortable. It's gonna absorb that vibration of the machines that you're on, and this foam's a lot more like boot foam. You know, you wouldn't see this quite as much in sneakers, and especially the application of it with up the sidewalls. So they pull a lot of inspiration from boots into these shoes to make them work like boots, but still have some of those features of sneakers. Because if you look at how bendable and flexible these are, they're very flexible. You know, these flex a lot more like sneakers. The boot, less so, but still really flexible. So I don't know if there's a shank on the inside. I don't think there is. And for a more sneaker style, it's not as necessary. But one of the more interesting things about these shoes is this outsole, because it's really unique in how they've done these lugs, because it's not symmetrical lugs all the way across. You've got what they call their Kujo Turf Grip rubber outsole that have these little grip pods. And I just thought initially that these were just different shapes and different colors molded into it, but it feels like they're actually a different material. Across the board on every single one of these shoes, The rubber durometer is around 65 Shore, but these little pods are even harder. They come in at like an 80 Shore. And so it clearly is a different material. And the idea with this is on one side you get your flat classic grip that's gonna wear a long time, but then on the other side with these little pods, they're a lot harder and they're a lot sharper, so you get a lot more grip on the wet grass, going up hills. And so is this specific for lawn care? It might be, I don't really know, to be honest. But I'm really curious if these are hollow on the inside, if this rubber outsole's full all the way through. Because we did the bar drop test and the yard shoe bounced up 2.5 inches, the jacks bounced up 3 inches, and the landscape only bounced up 2 inches. We also did the puncture test with the yard shoe 146, the jacks at 136, and the landscape at 109. And so that's where you get all the comforts through that midsole and the grip through that outsole. But I don't know how it's structured on the inside. Is there a shank on the inside? Is the outsole full rubber all the way through? Is there big voids in it? Is there a shank? That's what we're gonna figure out. So now let's cut these in half. All right, we got them cut in half, and if you're not subscribed, consider pushing the little subscribe button. Check out our handmade leather goods and check out our collaborations, because that's how we can afford to buy 3 brand new products just to literally destroy it, to try to figure out what the hell is the yard shoe and how is it different from other shoes. Is it worth it? Are they that different? That's how we do it, is with your guys' support. So now let's see what's inside. So what's on the inside? Well, there's not a shank in any of these boots, which I don't think is the end of the world, because they're supposed to be just as much sneakers as they are boots, but you'd think with yard care you might want the support of a shank, maybe in the boot, maybe even just like a nylon shank or a fiberglass shank, at least have it as an option. And then as for the lugs, unfortunately they are hollowed out, so you're not gonna get the full life of the lug completely worn through, because you have these voids that you're gonna wear into. But because you have these voids, they're also a lot squishier and softer. What would I prefer? I'd rather just have them full of rubber. I'd rather just have the extra durability and deal with the extra weight. And then for the counter, this is a fake leather counter. I was hoping it was real leather, but it's not. And this is still gonna be better than no counter, but it's not gonna be as durable as leather. So what is the difference between a dedicated yard shoe compared to just a regular shoe? Well, it seems like to me, after looking at all this and really trying to understand it, it comes down to the 3 factors of breathability, water resistance, and comfort. And those 3 things are what are in a lot of other boots and shoes. So how is this distinct? Well, I think it's the blend and the application of it, because none of these are completely waterproof, but also none of these are completely breathable through and through. And that is surprisingly hard to find. It really just comes down to a really simple application of materials in a unique way, using some neoprene, using some spacer mesh, some TPU overlays, and positioning and using materials and techniques that you see in a lot of other shoes, but positioned specifically for yard work. So then, are these shoes specifically designed for yard work, or are these just regular boots and shoes that they just put the yard work name on? These shoes to me are clearly designed for yard work. Everything and every aspect, every element of these shoes clearly went through the lens of how do we make a better yard shoe. And that to me is the main advantage and the main point of these shoes, because you could get comparable shoes and boots at a similar price. But I think what you're really paying for with these shoes is a small family-owned brand and a very dedicated design specifically for one industry and one purpose of yard work, of landscaping, framing everything around that one purpose. So then are they worth the price? You know, there's not very much leather on there, there's some fake leather substitutes, and you know, there's some voids in this, and there's not, you know, all these different things. I still think they're within the right price range, and for as small of a brand as they are, they're clearly trying to compete with the price of your more affordable work boots and sneakers and work sneakers. So to me, I think it's on par with where it should be. Now at the end of the video, did we figure out why landscapers and yard workers and weekend warriors love Kujo shoes so much? It all comes down to balance, because they balance all those things we talked about in a unique way that no other boot or shoe company has, and position it in the same way that they have. They found a niche in the industry, found a specific need that wasn't being met, and they innovated to meet that need, and that's exactly what they are. So let me know what you guys think, and if you have a pair of these, let me know your experience in them and what you thought of these shoes and boots. And thank you guys for all your support. See ya.